Derrick Henry and Kyren Williams will have a huge bounce back fantasy performance in week 2. We go through our week 2 running back and quarterback rankings on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial on NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We're headed into week 2, and we're going into our running back and quarterback rankings. That's going to be our typical Wednesday moving forward throughout the season. We have a lot to get through, so I'm just going to jump right into it with our running back rankings. Starting at the top here, I have Mr. Kyren Williams himself as my running back 1. You also have him ranked pretty high at running back 5. But my thing is I just loved to see the dominance he had over the snap share, right? 91% of the Rams offensive snaps he played in week 1. Only Jonathan Taylor saw a higher team percentage among running backs. And like the week 1, we knew it was a hard matchup against the Lions. But this week he gets the best matchup against the Cardinals, who were the worst against running backs last year. And then they just allowed like Josh Allen and James Cook to run all over them in week 1. So love Kyren Williams this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting the volume. We noted that we didn't see Blake Corum on the field at all here for the Rams. So it was clearly the Kyren Williams show. They're going to lean a lot more on the run without Puka Nacua. They're going to sort out what they have between Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, and Colby Parkinson at tight end, how they move the ball when they're not throwing to Cooper Kupp a lot. So a lot of this offense is going to go through Cooper Kupp and Kyren Williams going forward. Cardinals defense just stinks. It's just terrible. There's a lot of holes everywhere. So basically you can do whatever you want against it. So I think that means a big game for Kupp and Williams. You'll see Kupp high in my wide receiver rankings as well this week when we get to it. But yeah, I do like Williams quite a bit. And I think this is going to be a high scoring game. Get all your guys in there on both sides as much as possible. I think everyone could really go off because the Rams defense didn't show a lot here against the Lions either in week 1.
For the rest of our running backs in the top 5, we have the same running backs, just in a different order. It's Kyren, Bijan Robinson's number 1 for you. I love the way he was used this week. Saw over 90% of the Falcons snap count as well. Finally, Tyler Algier seems to be lost. Love that for him. Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, and Saquon Barkley. Those guys make up our top 5. You're plugging them into your lineup. They're going to be great. Derrick Henry, though, we're saying it's going to bounce back. We both have him as our running back 6. We're putting him right back up there, although he had a disappointing performance in week 1. He scored the touchdown, still finished as just the running back 30 on the week, though, with Justice Hill taking up way too many snaps. But that was against the Chiefs. They're behind most of the games. They use Justice Hill as that receiving back. Against the Raiders this week, we expect them to have a lead, and that's where Derrick Henry dominates. He should be fed way more this week.
Yeah, just throw the Chiefs game out the window, but don't throw the Raiders run defense out the window from last week. They struggled against the former Ravens duo of J.K. Dobbins. Gus Edwards wasn't all that good, but overall it was 176 rushing yards for the Chargers. And we know the best rushing offense when it's going in the NFL is the Ravens, and they're at home. Now, this young offensive line is going to have to work hard a little bit better than it did last week. They're also not getting too much blocking. Keep in mind from Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, they're 2 receiving tight ends. But that said, I think they'll control the action up front against the Raiders, at least in the running game. And I see Derrick Henry totally going off. It's just a matter of who's going to have more touchdowns, him or Lamar, as we get close to the end zone here.
Moving forward throughout our running back rankings, we both have Jahmyr Gibbs, running back 7. You're plugging him in. Joe Mixon had a huge week 1, and we decided to push him up our rankings for week 2. We both have him at running back 8 against the Texans. He plays for the Texans against the Bears in week 2. Are we overreacting to week 1? Because he got 30 carries in week 1. The Bears are a tougher defense than the Colts overall, even though like the Titans couldn't do anything last week, but Spears and Pollard both average over 5 yards per carry. Like they could run, they just didn't they weren't able to because Will Levis was so bad, so they weren't on the field much. But are we overreacting to Joe Mixon's week 1 and putting him too high this week?
Well, I hope Bengals fans are not overreacting, seeing what they lost in Joe Mixon, what Zack Moss and Chase Brown did against the Patriots. So maybe they're regretting this a little bit. But Mixon came out; he ran well. It's a very good offense overall. You do run on the Bears; that's their weakness. They're built to stop the pass with their corners and pass rush. So run on the Bears, and I like that. The Texans came out running. I don't know if it's all that great overall for CJ Stroud. I thought this team could be overall improved, right? And they could run, be a little bit more effective. Stroud was okay, but maybe those big ceiling games are gone because this team is more complete and they're going to get touchdowns to a bunch of guys. They're not going to rely on Stroud to throw a ton here to win games. So Mixon is well positioned in this game. I think it's a tricky matchup for Stroud, enough so that they might lean on the running game a little bit more this week. They're at home. Figure they'll play with the lead on Sunday night. So I love Mixon this week to keep it up. I probably would have liked him regardless of what the output was in week 1 because of this particular matchup.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say. It's not that we're ranking him here just because of what he did in week 1. It's because of the matchup, like you brought up. It's a better run matchup than pass. I do think Mixon gets used a lot again. I'm not going to always have him ranked in my top 10 unless he continues just like blowing people out. But for this week, I'm happy to have him there in this matchup. Devin Achane's my running back 9. Keep an eye on that. Raheem Mostert's out for the game on Thursday night, but Achane's also questionable. Keep an eye on his ankle injury. But if he plays, I mean, it's hard to rank him outside the top 10 without Mostert there. Isaiah Pacheco, he has a nice matchup against Bengals. We both have him top 10. One guy I have outside my top 10, you include him, is James Cook against the Dolphins on Thursday night. He disappointed. I mean, he was okay against the Cardinals, right? But we wanted him to do a lot more. The thing is, Josh Allen took both the rushing touchdowns, and that's what he does. So it's so hard to rank him up there when he doesn't get those opportunities. It should be a high-scoring game against the Dolphins. So James Cook is a fine play, but I have him at running back 14. You're sticking with him as a top 10 guy at running back 10.
Yeah, I think he can actually have a better game this week, and I think he will find the end zone on Thursday because you look at last week, I mean, he was, I think, around 11.3 points. That would have put him as RB24, so he was the last RB2 on the board. And that's really hard when you have a good rushing game and you're not too involved in the passing game and you don't get that touchdown, and all of a sudden you got to find different ways to score. So it's hard. Like you rush for 100 yards and you don't get much for it. So
No.
yeah, it's tough in fantasy, but I think he'll be a little bit more involved this week. Remember, the Dolphins' corners are pretty good, so I think this could be a game where Khalil Shakir they have confidence in the slot. I think they'll also look at Dalton Kincaid, James Cook, shorter passes, those type of things. So we want James Cook to get enough receptions if he's not going to get the touchdown, right, to make up for his numbers if it's just purely rushing here. So I like James Cook. I mean, look at Travis Etienne. He fumbled at the goal line. He could have had a pair of touchdowns. Tank Bigsby looked pretty good. So I think it'll be a nice rebound week for Cook where he pushes more to what we think he was in the preseason.
Now, if you have Jordan Mason, right, if you drafted him, it looks like Christian McCaffrey is going to be out again. In my initial rankings, I didn't know where to put him because Christian McCaffrey, there wasn't news out about him fully. Now it seems like it's pretty doubtful he's going to play in week 1. So I when I go back in here to fix up my rankings, I'm going to have him about my running back 7. I might even put him above Jahmyr Gibbs, right around the Joe Mixon range. How high will you have Jordan Mason ranked now that we have this Christian McCaffrey news?
Yeah, I probably will keep him about where I have him. I think where do I have him in like the teens, kind of like I just can't push him too much higher, right? I love a lot of those guys up there. So again, he's a solid play. I mean, he is a must play no matter what. If McCaffrey's out, you've got to play quote 49ers starting running back. I don't care who it is. Like we've seen this in the past. There was Elijah Mitchell at one point before McCaffrey, and you started him. So it's kind of like the Dolphins. Who's the Dolphins starting running back? It doesn't matter. If that person is a starting running back for that team, you're going to start him in most weeks unless it's a really difficult matchup. The Vikings are not such a matchup, right? They're manageable. You can run on them. So I'd say you play Jordan Mason. I think they just have to be careful about overworking him too. I know why they're doing it because there's no Elijah Mitchell. Isaac Rendo's a rookie. So I think they're going to probably put a lot on Jordan Mason, but keep in mind Debo is going to be involved in this rushing attack a little bit, so his numbers stay up as well. So keep that in mind, where they might not want to run Mason to the ground if they need him for a little bit longer term.
Yeah, Mason's just going to be a great play as long as Christian
Yeah.
McCaffrey's out. I expect the 49ers to stomp up on the Vikings with Sam Darnold back there. So he'll get a lot of opportunity. We're going to get into some running backs that we expect to be really solid RB2 plays this week, including Ramondre Stevenson, who just was a complete workhorse in the entire Patriots offense in week 1. And we expect that to be how he's utilized again in week 2. We'll get into all of that after the break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Yeah, because that's why. They are always giving you great deals, and they have a great deal for you now. Something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. And if that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it in FanDuel's Double Your Winnings for all of Sunday 9:15. That's this Sunday 9:15 pregame moneyline bets. Check that out. Profit Boost will be live starting this Thursday, September 12th. View your account page now to learn more about your boost. Visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Check out the odds, get in the action here for the NFL, and get to watch those games on that Sunday Ticket trial. All right, Michelle, it is time to continue the show, and we will look more at our running back rankings. Ramondre Stevenson. He was the only thing the Patriots were really trying to do against the Bengals, yet the Bengals could not stop it. He ran all over them. Their offensive line played great. Now he gets the Seahawks, who, look, they faced a shell of a running game, right, with Javonte Williams and Julian McLaughlin in week 1. So what do you make of this? They are at home this week, which I think helps Stevenson. We have him as RB15, 17, so right in the middle of those good RB2 plays.
Yeah, I mean, he saw 25 carries last week, and I know the Bengals couldn't stop him, and they just kept doing it, and they kept the Bengals off the field. But I expect them to try to do that same thing against the Seahawks, right? They don't want the Seahawks' explosive offense. At times they can be explosive to be on the field. They're going to try to limit keep Geno Smith and DK Metcalf on the bench. And like you mentioned, the Seahawks slowed down the Broncos run game, but who cares? They stink, right? The Seahawks last year allowed the second most rushing yards on the season. I don't think they've improved it all that much where they're just going to be shutting down guys. So Ramondre Stevenson's an easy play this week. I have him ranked running back 15. You have him 17. Great play. Plug him in. Now, one guy you're much higher on than I am is our boy, Najee Harris.
Yes.
You have him at running back 15 up against the Broncos. I have him down at running back 23. And it's really because Justin Fields still out there, right? And Fields doesn't dump it down to the running backs. He only saw 2 targets last week, 1 reception. And he had a fine day on the ground. And if he got a touchdown, it would have been a fine fantasy day. But without those targets, it's hard to put him up above that running back 20 spot.
Yeah, I'm putting him high because I think the Steelers, whether they're using Justin Fields or Najee Harris, are going to run all over the Broncos. Keep in mind, Geno Smith scored last week. You had Zach Charbonnet score on a short pass. You had Kenneth Walker just pound on this Broncos front. So if I'm going to look at 2 teams I'm going to try to exploit as much as I can early in the season, Cardinals are 1. I'd say Broncos are right up there with what you can do, especially on the ground. So I think I was impressed with what they were doing. I know they didn't get a touchdown, but Arthur Smith's offense did look good on the ground. And I think what's going to happen here, if it's Fields and Harris, Jalen Warren's unplayable. He's not going to be on the field. He's not going to get the checkdowns that much. And if the Steelers are playing from ahead, which I think they will, I think TJ Watt I wish we could play him in other than IDP leagues because he'll probably own Bo Nix in this one. So I think Harris and Fields just trade blows here, right? They just pick, you run the ball, I'll run the ball, you run the ball, I run the ball. We both score, and that's how they kind of crush the Broncos this week.
Yeah, hopefully they get into the end zone this week. Last week, the team didn't get into the end zone, but they were moving the ball. I will say, it's been so frustrating to watch the Steelers offense over the last few years. I didn't feel that in this game. They were moving the ball. They didn't get into the end zone, but it didn't feel as hard as it typically has over the last few years. So yeah, I mean, Najee's a fine play, but he has to score a touchdown. Now, J.K. Dobbins, is he a trustworthy start after his week 1 blow up? He has 2 huge runs last week, right? But also puts up 135 yards on 10 carries. He gets the Panthers, who that's an amazing matchup as well. Alvin Kamara just averaged 5.5 yards per carry against the Panthers last week. The Saints put up 47 points. We know how much Jim Harbaugh loves to run the ball. Like J.K. Dobbins, man, he's a great play this week. I have him as running back 18, and that might be too low.
Yeah, I also like Gus Edwards. Get on that bus this week because this is going to be handoff fun here for the Chargers in Carolina. Now, the Panthers' defense was depleted in the offseason. Guess what happened? Derek Brown, their best remaining player, their best defensive player overall, went down with a knee injury. So they've been completely gutted. The Chargers are going to do what they want. And how about my guy, Joe Alt? He looked awesome last week. So I love this offensive line. This is why they went out and got Alt. I mean, this is why they could afford getting Dobbins and Edwards on the cheap because they had this stud of a right tackle working with Rashawn Slater to blow people off the ball. The Panthers are going to be destroyed. And I really think, look, 176 was the Chargers total last week. 180 is what the Panthers gave up. I would not be surprised if the Chargers put up 200. That's how I think they could dominate this game and potentially shut out the Panthers. That's how I think Jim Harbaugh is going to come out here with Greg Roman. So I think they're going to play from ahead. It's not going to be close at all. Go wire to wire. Dobbins and Edwards do their damage. So I love Edwards as a backdoor flex play. I think Dobbins might elevate back to RB1 this week with his final output.
Series, as long as he's healthy. I mean, he's a great running back, right? He leads all running backs in yards per carry in his career since entering the league in 2020. He's good. He just has to stay healthy. As long as he's healthy, you can play him. It was great to see him actually used last week. Now, also a guy that led his backfield he played nearly double the snaps as the guy he was in competition with. I put in quotes, it was never competition. But Zack Moss, right? I have him as running back 22. You have him down at running back 30 against the Chiefs. He was running back 21 last week, and he only had 9 carries because the Bengals literally never had the ball. They had 8 offensive drives. That was the fewest in the league. 48 offensive plays. I mean, the Patriots just kept them off the field. Now, maybe the Chiefs also do that as well, but I find it hard to believe the Bengals are going to have that few of offensive drives again. He was also used as their pass catching back. He was used when they were down, which they're probably going to be down against the Chiefs. So I like Moss in this matchup. We know in any given game, he's going to get the goal line opportunities, has a chance to score. So I don't have him super high, running back 22, but I think your running back 30 is a little rude. Vinny.
Well, didn't you just say Derrick Henry finishes RB30 against the Chiefs last week? So I didn't even know that, and I just ranked him at RB30 because I said, I don't know.
Derrick Henry wasn't used.
Yeah, this could happen again, right? I mean, if one team likes to abandon running the ball quickly, it's the Bengals. They can throw 80 times in a game or 80% of the time in a game, and they will have no problems with that. The biggest thing is, will T. Higgins play to get this offense moving a little bit more? I mean, I don't know. It was just not a very good start at all for the Bengals. Just a rough game. We'll have to count on Joe Burrow kind of rebounding, but yikes. This is a tough offense to totally trust right now all of a sudden. And it has been one of the most trustworthy offenses before the season.
Yeah, I just have a hard time seeing this offense being worse than it was in week 1. And if he could finish his RB21, yeah, then I got to put him around that again. Now, there's 3 guys that have pretty bad matchups this week or in just bad situations. So you have Aaron Jones, who had a solid week 1, 18 points. He finishes the running back 8 on the week, but he gets the 49ers. Who shut down Breece Hall on the ground last week. And Jones wasn't really heavily used as a pass catcher in his first game with the Vikings. Then Zamir White, who got outsnapped by Alexander Madison, gets the Ravens. That's not great. DeAndre Swift, who only got 10 carries last week because the Bears offense was so atrocious, gets the Texans. Really tough run defense as well, who just shut down Jonathan Taylor. If you had to play one of these guys, who would you go with, Vinny?
I think it's 100% Jones. I don't touch the other two because Jones at least is a volume play. He's a veteran. He always surprises us with his production because he's a pro. He goes out there, does what he needs to do. And Aaron Jones is an older version of Brees Hall. I'm not saying he's going to explode. Brees Hall didn't have a big game either, right? He got into the end zone. That helped, but he had a good scrimmage game to go with that touchdown. So that's the type of game you can expect from Aaron Jones. But he's a volume-based play at this point. I mean, Ty Chandler, not good, but the Vikings offense has got plenty of weapons here. And Sam Darnold's competent enough. We saw in the first game where they're going to move it and put their back in position. So I don't see a lot from passing him. They're going to have to grind it here with Jones. So again, just don't have high expectations, but I think he could get enough volume to be an RB2 this week.
And in one of my leagues, Zamir White got dropped already. I'll say I don't want to play him this week against the against the Ravens, but I have put in a claim to pick him up, and I hope I get him. Like, I'm not going to start him this week, but he shouldn't be dropped. So just check to see if he got dropped. He should be picked up. That's an overreaction to week 1. We're going to get into our quarterback rankings to finish up today's show right after this quick break. If my computer works. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Right at the top of our list of the quarterback rankings, it's no surprise that I guess it is a surprise. I was going to say Josh Allen, but Josh Allen's my number one. Jalen Hurts is your number one, and then Josh Allen. Why Jalen Hurts over Josh Allen in week 1 or week 2?
Well, I did kind of notice the Falcons struggled with the running of Justin Fields, and I think that'll be more of a factor on Monday night in Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts typically also seems to be better at home. I think he just kind of handles things a little bit better there, the environment. And I think this Falcons defense can be had still in a lot of areas, even though they were touchdown less allowing to the Steelers, right? I still think they can explode a little bit here with the weapons they have. So again, he's going to have a high floor. Like, he was not very good at all. He was making bad decisions and he was still scoring, even though Saquon Barkley scored 3 touchdowns, right? If he had cut down on the turnovers, it would have been fine. It would have been a fine, typical Jalen Hurts performance, even without the pushing and the running in the red zone. So I think he rebounds. We see more of him. And again, I don't see Saquon Barkley scoring 3 times every week. So this is going to be close, but I like Hurts a little bit more than Allen this week. I'll say Allen on a short week at Miami.
That's fair. I mean, I have Jalen Hurts at number 3, right? It's just Josh Allen's so good, and he always kills Miami. So that's why I'm going to keep him at 1. We have the same exact top 4 in a different order, but the same guys. So Josh Allen, Anthony Richardson, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson are each top 4 of our running back or quarterback rankings this week. I have Anthony Richardson, though, as my quarterback 2 on the week. He gets the Packers. The Packers defense looked just as bad as they did last year, even though they have a new defensive play caller. It didn't really look any different. They had no answers for Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown, especially as that game went on. And it's just Anthony Richardson, every time he plays, is a good fantasy quarterback. I mean, we've only seen 3 full games from him, and it's been 30 points, 26 points, 21 points. First week, he was the quarterback 4 at 26 points. He's just going to keep doing it. I mean, he scores touchdowns at a high rate and he runs the ball. He's just a great fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, we loved Kyler Murray and Jayden Daniels on this podcast. Right now, Jayden Daniels is up there with Baker Mayfield behind Josh Allen in scoring. We know Anthony Richardson's right behind. Kyler had a pretty good game as well. The reason we like those 2 guys is because we didn't have to pay as high to get Richardson, but we never said Richardson was not going to be worth his value, right? He was a better chance to deliver on his value than CJ Stroud, just because of the cheat code, all that stuff. And Look, we saw what the Packers did in their first game with Jeff Hafley as defensive coordinator. They allowed a big play to A.J. Brown. That's good news for a big play quarterback. It was also Shane Steichen. He's probably going to learn a little bit what Jalen Hurts, his old quarterback, did in the first game, kind of scheme, do that. I think you'll see Michael Pittman also more involved in a better way this week. So, yeah, and also an interesting development now is that no Jordan Love, so the Colts might be playing from ahead. So that could be more confidence there for Richardson playing off Jonathan Taylor this week. So a little bit of twist and turn that makes Richardson very appealing.
Yeah, I mean, Malik Willis back there. The Colts could have
Yeah.
the ball a lot more often. Again,
Yeah.
they were the team that had the fewest offensive plays last week, the Colts. So there should
Yeah.
be more opportunity going around, and Richardson was still already the quarterback 4 with that little
Yeah.
opportunity. Now, you brought up Jayden Daniels and Kyler Murray. You keep playing them. You keep plugging them in. I mean, week 1, Jayden Daniels ends up as the quarterback 3 on the week, and he didn't even have a good week. And that's what we said. He doesn't have to be a good NFL quarterback to be a good fantasy quarterback because he's going to run, and he gets the Giants this week. So you keep plugging him in. Kyler Murray, we both still have as our quarterback 6. You keep plugging him in. He gets the Rams. It should be easier than what he had against the Bills last week. Listen, I mean, Kyler Murray started the first half off, and I was looking great, right? He scores 12 points in the first half, 12 fantasy points in the first half. He ends with 14 fantasy points on the week. Only 31 passing yards in the second half by Kyler Murray. And I mean, Marvin Harrison just wasn't involved at all. I expect the Cardinals to figure it out. They've already come out and said they have to figure it out, right, to get Marvin Harrison involved. So I expect better things this week. And then obviously, yeah, we brought up Jayden Daniels. Do you have anything to add there with Daniels or Murray?
Yeah, quickly, I think the fantasy god shifted from Murray to Daniels, so we would both be happy. That's what happened because we love those two guys as our quarterbacks. Now, I will say one thing: we'll get into wide receiver rankings, but what I do think will happen here is Marvin Harrison Jr. and Terry McLaurin will have big rebound games, and that's going to help, obviously, the value of those guys because they need their go-to guys to really reach their potential this season. So the running is going to be there. That's your floor. They'll do more of the ceiling here this week, I think, with their passing weapons.
Now, Patrick Mahomes rounds out your top 7 quarterbacks. I have him at 5. I mean, with Mahomes, it's so hard. He hasn't been a good fantasy quarterback for a while now, but we do expect this to be a high-scoring matchup against the Bengals. And then you're up on Jared Goff. You were right about him last week. He didn't put up very many fantasy points. I had him ranked too high. And I had him ranked around this spot last week, quarterback 8. I'm keeping him there at quarterback 8, but now you also join me at quarterback 8. He stays at home. He gets the Buccaneers defense. I mean, I don't think he's going to have 2 low fantasy scoring games at home, right? So that's why I have him at quarterback 8. The offense was moving, but for whatever reason, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta were involved. They should be much more involved this week.
Yeah, he kind of saved some of his value with that long Jameis Williams touchdown. I mean, that helped last week, but that's an encouraging sign also. Williams, I think, has another good matchup this week. So that's great. And I think Amon-Ra can rebound as well for this matchup, and Sam Laporta is going to get his at some point. And the Bucs are pretty good against the run. That'll also put Jared Goff in position to throw. They've been good against the run for a while now, so I think they'll be fine with Gibbs and Montgomery. But I think what you'll see is a little bit more ball in the air and maybe a little high-scoring game. Right, the Buccaneers come in hot. You want some resistance from the Bucs in this game. So Jared Goff is going to have to chuck it a little bit more with Mayfield. So again, fantasy points beget other fantasy points. So that's what I'm excited about this one. Let's light it up here. If there's receivers, there's bad secondaries. Let's make it happen so everyone goes off in fantasy in week 2 in Detroit.
Yeah, we like Dak at home. Now, we didn't like him in week 1 at the Browns. And the Cowboys put up points, but Dak Prescott did not put up fantasy points. So that worked out, but we expect him to bounce back. We have him as quarterback 9. Now, we will get into Baker Mayfield in a second here because we both really like him again this week. But Joe Burrow, what are we doing with him, right? Because week 1, atrocious, ends as the quarterback 27 on the week. They just can't get anything going. He gets the Chiefs. I have him ranked as quarterback 15. You have him at 13. Will T. Higgins play? Like, what do we do with Joe Burrow at the moment? Because you drafted him pretty high if you have him.
Yeah, this was a guy I didn't really want to invest in, partly because he burned me last year and I basically started Jordan Love over him for much of the season. But this year, look, this is not a great start. I mean, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, not round to help your quarterback. This is bad. I think the way this whole thing was handled with the contract really messed up the Bengals start here. And Higgins still could be messing up his quarterback here. And if I'm Joe Burrow, I'm a little bit upset, right? That this is what's happening with my team. I mean, the one good thing, I think, one silver lining is the fact that he has a very good history against the Chiefs. His eyes light up. It's not exactly Burrowhead again. Let's not start that. I mean, they need to get a win. They just lost to the Patriots. They're not going to be coming in strutting and cocky in this one. So let's just get him on the board. Now, Higgins returning would be nice. That'd be very helpful. I just don't know what you're going to get. Are you going to get last week's performance and they stay a clunker, or do you get Burrow? Oh, I love playing against the Chiefs, and then we're going to get this. That's why he's at 13, right? Splitting the difference between not a QB1 I'm all that interested in, but not totally killing him in deeper leagues. So that's where I stand with Joe Burrow this week. I just don't know what I'm going to get, and therefore he's in the middle. And again, he can't run his way out of this for production either.
Yeah, I do think he's playable. He definitely is. And maybe it was just one of the we see it all the time where a team just overlooks a bad team, especially
Yeah.
upcoming on their schedule. There's a team that you mentioned, like they make their eyes widen, right? So they see
Yeah.
the Patriots, like, so they're more focused on getting ready for the Chiefs. That could have happened. We see it all the time. Now, let's say you drafted Caleb Williams. You don't want to plug him back in until you see him like get better, right? Don't drop him, but just maybe not plug him in this week. Keep him on the bench. There's three guys that possibly you could have got off waivers after this week that have really nice matchups. You got Justin Fields at the Broncos, Matthew Stafford at the Cardinals, and Baker Mayfield at the Lions. The Broncos let Geno Smith put up 18 fantasy points last week, and allowed him 30 rushing yards as well. It's not like Geno Smith runs, right? So love that for Fields. Stafford always beats up on the Cardinals, and they just allowed Josh Allen to be the quarterback one on the week. But there's no Puka, so a little bit worried about that. And then Baker Mayfield has just been on fire and ended as a quarterback 2 last week. And the Lions were one of the worst pass defenses last season, and then allowed one of two teams to allow 300 plus passing yards last week against Matthew Stafford. So if you had to rank these guys, Vinny, in Fields, Stafford, or Mayfield, how would you go?
Yeah, it's pretty close for me. I mean, I do like Fields, but I think I have to go with Mayfield. I mean, just he's on fire, like you said, and the receivers have good matchups this week, and Godwin is playing well, so he's there. And isn't it funny how Baker Mayfield is so much better of a fantasy asset than Deshaun Watson? And
Yes.
now, early in the season, Justin Fields is a better fantasy asset than Caleb Williams. I mean, this is how the league goes for you. But yeah, I would say you go there. I do like Stafford this week because I think he's going to have to throw quite a bit. The Cardinals can move the ball on the Rams. So there's that. They're going to find some volume, right, with Demarcus Robinson and some other guys after Cooper Kupp, maybe some Colby Parkinson. So there's some ways to spread the ball around for the Rams. So I think I would have the least trust in Fields. I just mentioned I like him and he's startable, but I think all three of these guys are startable. But I would go Mayfield probably first easily on this one. And then after that, let me see what I had. I mean, I think I'd say Stafford and then Fields. I'll go with that to be safe.
Okay. Yeah, I would go Baker first, then Stafford, then Fields. So we have the same rankings there,
Yeah.
but I do like them all as well. And I will say it's gross, and I know maybe you don't want to root for him either with what's come out lately. But Deshaun Watson against the Jaguars is also an option. I know he was
Yeah.
atrocious against the Cowboys. Jaguars allowed Tua to put up over 300 passing yards. They're a bad pass defense. I do expect Watson and Amari Cooper to make a comeback. We're going to talk about Amari Cooper on tomorrow's show when we get into our wide receiver rankings. Is there any other quarterback you want to throw out there if someone's looking for a replacement for Jordan Love or Caleb Williams?
Yeah, if someone dropped Kirk Cousins, I would think about it because, again, he's going to have to throw for some yards. The Eagles can force turnovers, but he's going to have to throw for some yards on Monday night. I mean, the Eagles are not necessarily a shutdown defense. They're kind of a big play defense now with Vic Fangio. So, again, there's going to be some yards and points to be had there if you're desperate and Kirk Cousins available.
I agree. I agree with that. That is it for today's show. Thank you to all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Everydayers will be back tomorrow to give you the rest of our rankings at the wide receiver and tight end position. Don't miss it. Bye, y'all.